It's Cinco de Mayo, and I'm not going to talk about margaritas. I'm going to talk about a fuel pump. This is from our friends at DW, or Deechworks. Got a 2018 Mustang here that needs some more fuel put into it. This thing's got a Pro Charger on it. Gonna put it on E85. This pump kit works on 2011 to 14 Coyotes and all the way through the 15, 16, 17, 18s. So, if you want to know how to put this sweet fuel pump in, follow along. Let's find out what is inside of the box and what makes this thing plug and play for these new Coyotes. So, I'm gonna open it up, we're gonna find out. All right, good thing we got a dart right here. Ooh. Ooh. Instructions for the car guy that will probably ignore those. Got the big 400 pump. This will help us put E85 into that white Pro-Charged Mustang there. All right, this is like the goodie bag. Looks like a new filter. We got a little wiring harness, new fuel line, some clamps, probably a siphon tube. Obviously I haven't put this in yet, but I'm gonna guess that's what it is since these cars have saddle tanks in them. And speaking of saddle tanks, let's start taking it apart. Let's get this tank out. Well, not the tank, but the fuel pump. All right, seats move forward. Pro tip number 1 on this project, make sure that you've drained some of the fuel out. Make sure that you got about a quarter tank of gas when you start this project. And by draining the fuel, I mean flooring it, because that's the best way to drain a fuel tank. Just releasing this last clip here, and now the seat can come out. That is how easy that is. 2 clips. Thank you, Ford. You did an awesome job on this. With the back seat out, I got this cover out of the way. I had this here so that way when I pull this fuel line off, I can make sure that I don't get a bunch of fuel all over the place. So let me just pop in here and pop this clip. Oh yeah. So now the fuel line's disconnected. Easy. And next up, pull the red clip and pop out. That's our power wires and our senders and all that kind of stuff. So there we go. This is probably the most complicated part, but you gotta take your screwdriver, stick it down the flat, and then knock this ring off using your hammer. That's that, she's off. I'm gonna warn you, that does take a little bit of, you gotta get busy with it. You can't just tap on it lightly. All right, so we'll start pulling up our fuel pump assembly. You gotta be careful when you're fishing this guy out of here because it's a lot of stuff down a small hole, but I assure you it will come out. It's gonna drain fuel, there's no way around that, so it's gonna smell. The thing you gotta be careful with is the fuel level sender. I mean, you don't wanna break your gas gauge, but it will come right out to the point where then you can get to this other line and we can unhook it and pull the rest of the basket out. Now that this line is disconnected, I'm gonna put my finger over the hole because there is still some fuel in the basket. And then that way we can pull the factory basket out and not get any fuel smell inside of the car. The next step, now that we got the basket out, is you have to separate the 2 halves of the basket. Normally people use like 3 screwdrivers to release the, whatever these are, little locks. However, we've gone a little old school and a little creative here and used some hacksaw blades to try to unlock these. So once you've unlocked the tabs, you can just pull up and release the pump mechanism just like that. Next up, we got to sit here and wiggle off this siphon line. So I usually use a pair of needle nose pliers or a pair of dikes, and that raises it up enough to get it off. Removing the electrical connectors are next. That one is for the fuel level sensor, and that one is for the pump. And there we go. So, factory bottom of the basket, factory fuel pump, factory fuel sock, And now we'll get started getting this all out of here. The last electrical connector to the pump, and then down here we have a clip for the fuel pump itself. That way we can pull it all of the way out. I won't say that I'm a fuel pump expert by any means, but clearly you can see the blatant size difference between the factory and this DW400. But the main thing is look at the inlet size. And just like supercharging, you never want to have a restricted inlet. And this big 400 clearly has an awesome inlet on it. Due to the 400 pump being so much fatter on the body, the first thing you're going to notice is that it doesn't really want to slide up in there. Now, there's going to be a couple ways to trim this. Some guys are going to probably trim the inside of this. I'm going to go with a clip method where I just take a pair of dikes and I'm going to open up the basket with these little tiny clips, so you see that. With the fuel sock on here for the inlet, I'm gonna shove the pump up inside of here, but what I did is I kind of made sure that the fuel filter was gonna fit down in here. So I orientated it, I don't know what the word is, but made sure it was gonna fit so I didn't put this in a bind when it slid down in there. Before the pump assembly goes back down in the basket, make sure you do yourself a favor and put the siphon line on before you put the pump in the basket. Nice and snug. The moment we've all been waiting for. Lowering it down in and click. We are good to go. Nice. DW supplies you with this new feed line, so I just slid it onto the canister and now I'm tightening the hose clamps. You don't got to get the hose clamp too tight, but you just want to make sure that the feed line isn't going to come off, because you do not want the pressure drop, my friends. Now we're going to put the siphon line back on. Again, this is a new line that DW included in the kit, which is super nice because, man, reusing those plastic lines is just not a good idea. So we're just going to get this guy on here and then put this clamp on. Technically not the correct tool for doing this, but it does work pretty well. Remember earlier in the video when I said this thing was plug and play? I am not kidding. This end plugs right into that big DW pump, the old 400 there. This is gonna plug into the top of the basket, and this is gonna plug over onto the regulator side. So literally plug it in and we're done. Well, I didn't want to bore everybody with the wiring. Obviously, we clicked in the power wires, we clicked back in the fuel level sender into place. You know, we made darn sure that we didn't break this, and we're gonna go ahead and put this thing back down in the tank. All right, it's gonna be a little dark because as we've been working, we lost the sunlight, so I apologize for that. You're gonna wanna use a glove so you can reach down into the gas tank and connect on your transfer connector. Do not forget this, or you are gonna be really mad when you only have like a half a tank of gas all the time. And now the ring that I conveniently left on the roof. Oh, got it. When you guys are putting these things back together and you're sliding this ring, make sure that the lock ring goes to the center point of the gas tank lock right there. Because if you just get it to there, I assure you this ring will back off and you'll spill fuel. So after that, all I gotta do, I just hooked up the feed line there, and I'm just gonna hook up the power wire and the fuel level sensor, and that's it. Done. I'm gonna put that back seat back in. Now the back seat's in, I didn't show you guys that because that's super boring. We're gonna make sure we cycle the key a few times to help get the pressure up to the fuel rails. And after I do this a couple times, we're gonna hit the key. It'll probably crank a while, no problem. Hopefully she fires right up. That's it. I'm gonna give this install like a 2 on the difficulty scale out of 10. It's super easy. You can knock it out in a couple hours. And I know for a fact that this new pump from DW is gonna help this Mustang make probably somewhere well into the 800 horsepower range on E85. And that's insane, because back in the day, to make 800 to the wheels, you used to have to do a huge fuel system. We're talking thousands of dollars. And now with this simple pump dropped in the tank, this thing's good to go. So thanks DW, and if you guys buy one of these pumps, you're gonna love it, I promise. I'm gonna need you to put all the tools away, Wiley.
What's this say?
Oh, if you borrow them, put them back.
It's so small, no one sees it.